بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. نسأل الله تبارك وتعالى أن يجعل نياتنا خالصة لوجهه الكريم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. We welcome all of you to another gathering of our roundtable with our young adults who are youth Islamically and the next generation of leaders. So we're going to have a continued conversation with them as we prepare ourselves to pass the torch. And it is extremely important that we pass the torch as early as possible, and while we are able to assist and help the next generation move to the position of leadership. You know, this is a way of getting them in the spotlight, so to say, to express their concerns, their vision, their ideas, and then be a source of assistance and support and some form of mentoring so that the succeeding generation would be successful and the community would grow and the Deen of Islam would manifest its excellence and its perfection in our lives, in our community, and in our society. So inshallah, we want to start with what we left off with last week. And it was about passing the torch. So I'm going to ask both of our brothers, Brother Na'il and Brother Mujahid, to briefly take a few minutes to talk about, number one, the importance of passing the torch, the why, inshallah. So I'll let y'all go first, inshallah. Barakallahu bikum.
Brother Nile, you can start it off.
Bismillah, Habib. Bismillah. Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, everybody. Muhammad salli wa sallam ala Sayyidina Muhammad. So the importance, the why, the essence behind why it's important to pass the torch is for longevity and for preservation. A virtue of our believing ancestors has always been preservation. What are we preserving? What are we passing down? And why? And how? I think the why is understood generally by everyone who understands the importance of community. The how, I think, is where people clash and people butt heads, and the how is really where the confusion, where the disagreements come. But the why, I think, is extremely clear. In order for us to, raise our children under our rules, under our circumstances, under our intentions, if you will, that's important. The more we can control our communities, the more we can create those environments necessary for our children to internalize the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam from a young age. And I think that's really the essence of the why for me, to preserve the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam within the youth from as young as possible. Because the society we live in, there are there's counter things going on, different things that are normed within our society. Unfortunately, that's completely against the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and completely against really the prophetic tradition in general. So our goal is to preserve the prophetic tradition and the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam within our children, within our community, from as young as possible. Alhamdulillah.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wassalam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam ajma'in, amma ba'd. Alhamdulillah, jazakallah khairan, Brother Na'il, for that powerful introduction. Alhamdulillah, as to why establishing legacy and passing the torch is so important. In Islamic law, in the maqasid al-sharia, in the objectives of Islamic law, there are 5 objectives, 6 according to some, but 5 according to the most. Most say 5. And one of these things is the preservation of lineage, legacy, keeping these things safe. Why? So that, as Brother Na'il says, so that the deen and all that it encompasses can prevail and flourish through time. And mashallah, like Brother said, this is the essence of it, because we want to keep the sunnah of our beloved sallallahu alaihi wasallam alive. We want to keep this message of Islam alive. We want to pass our culture on. We want to pass our wealth on, to establish institutions, to establish strong families, which inshallah we'll get to a little later on in the program. All these things as to why passing the torch is so important. And through passing the torch from one generation to the next, it's not just you're passing on the exact same thing. With each generation, right? They, inshallah, if they've been if they have been given the wisdom and the tools to understand, they will learn from the successes of their predecessors and build upon that. And where their predecessors maybe made mistakes, had some shortcomings, they're able to either avoid those things and fix it, and then that legacy gets stronger. The legacy gets stronger, So all these things are very important, and so and that's also part of passing the torch. Explain to the new generation, hey, this is where we went. This is what we did right. You'll build upon that. This is where we went wrong. Watch out for that. You got to fix that or avoid that. And this creates strong leadership. Strong succession. And we've seen this. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is why he taught. This is why many of the scholars, this is why many of the most learned scholars, most of them, many of them, amongst the Sahaba, right? Aisha, Ibn Umar, Ibn Abbas, Ibn Mas'ud, right? Zayd bin Thabit, these were all young people, right? These were all young people. Usama bin Zayd, young, 17 years old, leading the military. So having young people there and giving them the wisdom and the know-how, having them around, letting them see the successes and failures so that they can interpret that and build upon that or fix what needs to be fixed. All that is important. And it creates strong generations, strong institutions, and strong families and communities. So that's essentially why passing torch is so important. So
if I could add briefly, Imam, if I could just add something very briefly, I didn't really see this in action for its importance of what it is until I went to China. Alhamdulillah, I was blessed to live in China for a year. It was an experience. I was teaching English. It was a whole experience that I had in China, mainly Shanghai, but I was able to visit the cities of Xi'an, of Beijing, all the major cities. Xi'an has a very, very, very long history of al-Islam. They're very, 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 they're Hanafi scholars, Hanafi madhab, very big in China. And why I use the example of China is because China is not a Arab culture. It's not an Arab society. So they have their own methods of, preserving the authenticity of who they are as Chinese people, but also preserving the deen of al-Islam within that. To the extent that when I went to China, I'd never seen a Chinese, imagine, Bruce Lee in a thobe and a, you know what I mean? That's what I was looking at, you know, mashallah. So I'm looking at these, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And they looking at me like, you know, they're after the, you know, of course their first assumption is I'm African. After, you know, I tell them, you know, I'm African American, and everyone knows Malcolm. So I'm saying like, no, you know, Malcolm is a part of my community. And they're like, wow. They're like, so they're so shocked. They're like, you know, you're American and you're a Muslim. Like, you know, how could these two mix? They're like, you know, you know, they want to hear every story now. But, you know, and to them, Islam is normal. I'm speaking to these Chinese people. They're like, my great. They have generations of Muslims in their family. And I didn't even know the extent of Islamic scholarship in China until I went. But, you know, they've preserved a lot of their Islamic tradition in Islam, that it's not separate from being Chinese to them. You know, I feel like, you know, in America, we're still young, but, you know, in America, there's a conflict between, you know, being Muslim and being American. Regardless of the political situation in China, it's places in China where Islam is norm, such that, you know, the children don't know anything else. So I mean, that's the goal for us to get to a place like that. And if they can do it under a communist government, we can dang sure do it under, you know, a much more, you know, open society and open government. So inshallah.
So this brings us to the how that you talked about, right? So 2 questions from both of y'all. Do you feel that in your respective communities or in the communities that you visit, your peer group, do you feel that this process is an active process of passing on the torch? That it's an active process that's being done? Or it is lacking in some areas? And what is it that needs to be done, which is that how, that you believe needs to be done to adequately pass the torch?
Bismillah, Brother Mujahid, you can start this one off since I commented. Bismillah.
Inshallah. So to answer your first question, Imam, honestly, no, there really isn't an active initiative to pass the torch on to the next generation, right? It might be passive in the sense that, like, okay, the imam is getting really old, or the imam just says, okay, I can't be the imam anymore, and or, you know, something, you know, imam might pass away, just something, you know, something happens, and then by bismillah, you know, the person who is, I guess, the most learned, people respect the most, you know, the community then just happens just to push this person forward to be, you know, in leadership, right? So it might happen that way, you know, but rarely have I seen, you know, maybe one community I can really think of, maybe two communities I can think of in America that I've had the opportunity to either be a part of or visited. They, you know, they actually were engaged in developing the youth. So the question is, like, how? You know, one of the hadith that I always love to reflect on, and was taught to me, and just, you know, I always keep it in my mind, particularly whenever I'm within the community or engaging with the people. And that's when the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, and this is narrated by his grandson Hussein alayhi salam, where the Prophet Sallallahu said, Sayyidul Qawmi Khadmuhum. He said, the Prophet Sallallahu, he said that the master of the leader of a people is their servant. So that means that the leader, that the imam or the leadership in the community has to teach and inculcate the significance of service to the next generation. You know, that's, you know, through that is like the foundation. That's part of the foundation of passing the torch. Because once these young people understand right? That part of your legacy is helping and serving the people, just like the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam helped and served the people, and he taught his Sahaba that he taught them to help and serve the people, and then the tabi, and it just goes all the way down. Like, it's essentially, as we know, it's in Islam there are, you can break it down simply by two forms of relationships. The first relationship is with the Creator, and then the second one is with the creation, right? So with the Creator, it's about ibadah. It's about worshiping Allah, praising Allah, and following all of Allah's commandments. With the creation, it's about khidmah. It's about service. It's about helping the people, serving the people. Even if that's a smile or pat on the back, or just good word, encouragement, the truth, even if it's against them or against yourself. All this is part of khidmah, of service, and just teaching that, having that as a focal point, and giving them the necessary skills to be able to serve, right? Giving them the necessary skills to be able to serve, because what ends up happening, what has happened a lot of times, sad to say, is that many of those in leadership, they themselves don't have the tools, so they have nothing to pass down, which hurts. So, and we spoke about this slightly last week, that so when the next generation goes off and gets those tools somewhere else and come back to the Masjid, now it's beef is a problem. Now old heads throwing shots at you at the in the minbar, in the khutbah, and it just creates this environment of animosity that doesn't need to be there. So just to kind of backtrack, so basically how teaching the importance of service to the community, learning necessary tools to serve the community. That will greatly benefit the predecessors and the new generation. So, alhamdulillah.
So, Bismillah. Alhamdulillah, I agree with most of what Brother Mujahid said. Spot on. I think that how our teachers taught us, and this is what I've seen active. I'm trying to find an example here, but in my travels I've seen this normal. This is a normal thing. Like, I remember when I went to Sudan, my time in Sudan was very normal. To the extent that I remember one of the sheikhs, he said, the sign of the success of your leadership has a lot to do with who comes after you. And this is what we took from our teachers, that if the person who comes after you, is like a representation of you. That if someone is taking leadership after you and they're unprepared, they're not, they're not suitable, that's a direct reflection of you. So this was their approach in Sudan, that they would start preparing the youth. Sometimes, as early as, it depends on where you at, but I would say the oldest is probably the oldest I've seen is at puberty. But realistically, how it is, and it's not foreign for them to have memorized the whole Quran by the time they reach the age of 9 or 10. So it was like a normal thing for them, and I think that we have to make that the norm here as well. That as soon as a leader comes into a position, he should already be plotting on how to bring the next person up. And I think what helps facilitate this is that there be, it be a joint position. And when I say a joint position, I mean like I think I've seen in Atlanta like a co-imam type of thing, like a 3 imam system, something like that, where there's like maybe one head imam and there's other imams also that frequently help out with the duties of imam, but also they also maybe rotate giving khutbahs, etc. So I think that helps, that if there's only one imam, then it may be more of a challenge on him because of all the duties realistically that it takes to be an imam, especially here in America or any part of the West, as well as so a co-imam system is good because the imam has help, and it helps, so each of them, if each imam, this is the vision that I'm having, like if there's 3 imams, one main imam, and there's 2, co-imams, and all 3 imams are, looking for youth to, are all training youth to come in a position after them, then we'll have choices. It'll be decisions. People can take on more than one role to do, different things. And I think that's the norm of how it should be, because we do have, there is also an issue of people kind of, some ego being attached to a leadership position, to the extent that if there's only one imam, if there's an imam and he's the only one, he doesn't have a method to purify his nafs, he doesn't have, someone to help him in that, then it could overtake him, perhaps, unfortunately. So if we're being realistic about all that it entails, and all of what are the complexities of our community, as far as on the human development side, what we have to help our people come out of, I think it's actually even more practical for there to be a co-imam system, of there to be more than one imam, and for there to be maybe a youth imam, or some position for the youth, so that can be like the segue into the imam position, if you will, that the youth are amongst themselves, have something going on that is not independent from the Masjid, but independent from the imam, if that makes sense. That the youth have their own thing going on already, where they're already helping each other and doing things. They already have their own type of service things going on that is specific to the youth, and the imam may come in every now and then and check up on what's going on, but they have that autonomy. They can do as long as they're sticking to whatever guidelines, whatever communal guidelines in place, alhamdulillah, they can do what they can do, whatever they need to do. And I think that should be normed. If that's normed, then that would take away a lot of issues. Also, ilm, knowledge. It should also be normal that people know their farz ayn, and farz kifaya, farz ayn. These things should be normal. Every individual, by the time someone reaches 18 or 16, or even younger than that, really, even puberty, because that's where responsibility comes. Once by the time they reach the age of puberty, they should know their farz ayn. They should know everything that's obligatory upon them. And I want to say this lastly, that I think one of the challenges, one of the issues in the traditional societies of our believing ancestors versus ours, is that there was no such thing as like teenager, if you will. It was either you were a child or you were an adult, if you will. There wasn't this exploratory age of people being able to just find themselves, whatever that means. So I feel like we almost, the society itself encourages youth to waste time, really, to waste time. And I believe that if we had like rites of passage, systems and different things in our community to where the youth can even be more direct with themselves as far as what their passion is. They can, go through a method or a system of even finding out what they want to do, how they want to be of service to their community. And I really feel like these things are what's missing, and these are the big hows. Like the longer children or young teenagers, young adults take to find their passion, to discover their mission, the longer it's going to take for them to even feel comfortable in certain responsibility and leadership positions. So I feel like that's something that needs to happen. And Allah knows best.
So let me ask a question, and I want to go back to come forward, because in the Black community, you had an ideal of community, and you had leadership, you had people being trained, and you would find that across the spectrum in the Black community. What happened to that in your view, right? What happened to that in the Black community, and how do you get it back?
SubhanAllah. I think that might be a whole nother class or a whole nother session for that one too, man. As far as what happened, I mean, there's so many things that can be said, but I think that, like I said, I think I said this in the last session too, that, a part of us, we've thrown out the baby with the bathwater, as far as there were many organization that were dedicated to the upliftment of our people, that had specific programs in place, like the FOY, like the MGT, even the MIB, Harlem, all of, you look at all these organizations, all of them had different programs, a part of the organization that were dedicated to uplifting people and getting them from where they are to where they need to be, whatever the mission was in the organization. And I really feel like when this whole wave of whatever orthodox or whatever real Islam is, that came in with the whole with the Salafi thing and all these different expressions of al-Islam were coming in, that were convincing us that whatever we had was not the full picture, was not the complete picture. And a part of it, I don't want to say, I mean, a part of it might have been correct on certain forms, but I would say most of it had the detriment of us seeing our own culture and our own way of doing things as less than, or as insignificant. I personally, in my own experience growing up in a Muslim community, I think the worst that I've seen of this is the Salafi Wahhabi, innovation. That inculcation in our community is the worst I've seen of it, as far as people believing that in order to be, the more Arab they were, the more Muslim they were. And for some people that meant only dressing this way, only doing these things, completely neglecting these things, etc. And many of those things is what made them authentically who they were, African, who they were, whether that be African American or Latino or whatever. So, and they were very successful in convincing our community that we needed to be something else. So I think that unfortunately that was what I've seen, and perhaps there is much more context to it, but as far to keep it brief, I think that was the main problem that came within our community, and that really dismantled a lot of not only our, not only the Masjid, but even a lot of our family life, our communal and family life was very severely affected by that those movements and that mode of expression of Islam, unfortunately.
Yeah, mashallah. Yeah, what the brother said is, pretty on point. But so Imam, basically what happened, we think about when African Americans first got out of slavery, right? We could, initially, we couldn't work with white people. We couldn't be in white neighborhoods, right? Some states literally wouldn't even allow African Americans. So what we do, we built our own, did our own thing. Black Wall Streets all over the country. We hustling, we moving, we grinding. We developing our own culture. Now we're passing on a legacy to our people. Then you get to the 1950s and 60s. Affirmative action. We start going to their universities, to white folk universities, and we rapidly start moving out of our neighborhoods and feeling like, hey, white man ice a little colder than black ice. White man green a little greener than my green, baby. They got the wave. Like that's what and it's crazy because I had my grandfather and I talk about this all the time, right? Because I remember one day, I ran up with my grandpa, right? I was like, yo, Gramps. He was like, yes. I was like, yo, what happened, man? What happened, Gramps? And he was like, yo, we failed y'all. Well, first what he said, he said, my generation failed your father's generation, and then your father's generation failed your generation, right? You made it clear, right? So, and so, and all that came through because, they started to believe that despite everything black folk have built and created and established, as long as they felt that the white guy next door was like, his joint was a little better, a little wavier, a little nicer, then he'll give up everything he built and go to the white dude, to the white joint. You know what I mean? And that don't, that hurt us. That hurt us. But we're still playing catch up. Muslim community now, right? Islam comes to us. Being black and Muslim was like synonymous, and that was like the thing, you were black or Muslim, there was no problem, there was no beef, you had all the different organizations doing their thing, right? Islamic Party in North America, Dar al-Islam, the Hanafi movement. We can keep going on, and then even the quote unquote pseudo-Islamic movements, right? You had Ansarullah, shout out to Imam Amin.
Y'all gonna stop taking these shots. You gonna be fair, or you gonna make me rip some Wahhabi heads off? Because all of them, unfortunately, were pseudo-Islamic movements.
Right. Okay, they were.
No. I had a young guy call me today. Muawiyah, this is for you. And we get this. Yeah, I caught his name, right? Our biggest problem is we don't know Islam.
Right.
That's why it's not working. And when I say that, Islam is a pure deen. Follow me. I jumped in because these shots, I don't like them. Right? Well, I gotta shoot back.
Okay.
They say when you fire your weapon, be prepared for a missile to come back at you.
Oh.
So,
you got the Cayman funk. All right.
Here's my point. Right? You named organizations. If you study all those organizations, none of them represented proper Islam.
Right.
They all had deviant ideas.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
Some of those ideas reach the level of kufr, if you understand. The point that we don't understand what has become normalized, you accept. Example, so all these movements today where we'll block out the Ansars, the Nation, as deviant and far away from Islamic, proper Islam.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll have in the community stuff that is just as dangerous from a different perspective of wrong understanding of Islam that lasts for 40, 50, 60 years and you say nothing about it.
Just like that issue. Yeah.
If you need me to get more, I can.
Right, I hear you. I hear you.
We understand.
Because that became normalized, it now becomes offensive when you point it out. So if you say, okay, well, we was on this, you were following Muhammad ibn Abdul-Wahhab. What are you talking about?
Okay.
Right?
Right.
But because you had the support of Saudi Arabia, who had the support of the West, and you continue to go on, now you became the norm. It is just like, if you want to go by analogy, the American system came out and wiped out the natives, and now the American system is the authority, and we forget all their injustices. You follow what I mean?
I hear you.
All right, so now Ansars and everything else.
Okay. Okay. So the point I was just trying to make, right? And I appreciate, the introduction, the interruption. It was good, man. I appreciate that. Alhamdulillah. But you made a good point. And I was going to bring it back to what Brother Na'il said, right? Was that what ended up happening was that more immigrants started coming in, and once again, we think their advance sound better than our advance. We right. So we think there's something wrong if a brother sound like he's sweating, then we think something wrong with that. I mean, brother had a nice voice, but if he doesn't have the whiny voice, we thinking like, man, something wrong with it. I mean, there's something wrong though. We started to feel that way, and even though maybe some things that they brought might have been correct from what we got initially. Some of it actually might have been Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Some of it might have been Ash'ari Aqidah. Some of it might have been Maturidi Aqidah. Some of it actually might have been the form of Madhahib. Some of it actually might have been the different Turuq and Tasawwuf. It might have been that, like, they might have brought, some immigrants might have brought that to us, right? But with that, we then started to, like you said, like, neglect who we are. We started to think once again that everything they had, that everything they had was better than what we have, right? Even like, especially culturally, like, think we like believing that there are certain things that we do culturally, which is permissible, which might be permissible, but because it's not what they do culturally, which also could be permissible, because what they do culturally, we think, okay, that's Islam. That's the only way it can be done. That's it. There is no ambiguity about it. There's no wiggle room from any other cultures or anything else. But they've had Islam for umpteen 100 years, 1,000+ years, so that must be right? That they on it right. We off. They on, we off. And like Bernal said, man, a lot of that, man, really, like, the Salafi community, the Wahhabis, they really pushed that. Like, that was really their thing. Like, whether they realize it or not, dang, cultural suicide and just, how we view ourselves, it took a huge nosedive with that movement. And a lot of people now, we're still playing catch up and trying to understand, who are we? Who am I as African American? Like all different, all kind of stuff, man, that we're still trying to play and catch up on. Like just like this one quick story, and I'm gonna shut up. I know Brother Na'il, like, I know he ready, right? He ready, man. Man, I can remember a couple years ago, man, going to a we went to a brother's house. It might have been for Iftar. I forgot what country he was from, right? And this brother was like, couscous is the food of Islam, right? Something like that, right? like couscous. Right. You know what I mean? Like, you know, and my man was like, he was like, well, you know, well for me, the food of Islam is fried chicken. You know, and the man was like, what this? He was like, what? How is that? How is that possible? The fried chicken is not halal, blah blah blah. And you know, I was just sitting there like wow, like, you know, so you know, for them, their culture is the deen. You know, even if it might be off, their culture for them is the deen. And then like, but our culture, anything like it's almost like anything is like, you know, cannot be in the deen, you know, or cannot be considered acceptable from the standpoint of the deen. And then like I said, we just fed into it, man. We feed into it. All right, so I'm gonna shut up, man. I know you have something to say.
No,
I don't. I put that up there because
I've seen that. No, I've seen that too. I've seen that too.
We gotta like you know, shake Imam Na'il.
Imam Na'il.
But I want to, before we address that, what's the solution of what y'all mentioned? Because y'all mentioned
right
what happened. Okay. And this happens. I want you to be real like this. I mean, when I became the imam, I was already prepared religiously, right? I had already studied. I was ready. I knew my Fard Ain, and I knew what to do. And I was in the position of imam without being the imam for like 3 years before I became the actual imam. And when I became the imam, it was because of death, not like the imam died and I was next in line, right? So here, I'm going to put this on you, on y'all. Y'all identify something. Tomorrow, you're the imams in your respective communities. What do you do to fix it?
Bismillah. I would say and this speaks to what Imam Na'im, his comment as well, that you know, we have to understand that, you know, what Allah has blessed us with, what we have. Allah has blessed us with our own cultural expression, and we have to embrace it for what it is. And in order for us to do that, we have to create modes. Excuse me, because, you know, what I mentioned last week, and also what Brother Mujahid just said, to them, their culture is Islam. It's so much a part of their culture that they don't see a separation between what their culture is and what Islam is. That we need to you know, do the same thing. And I feel like that starts with people understanding history, authentic, true history. And I think that what would help is for there to be different modes of cultural expression around that true history. So I mean, we and I'm actually working on, you know, bringing this into fruition right now. I'm not just talking, you know, for us to know names like Imam Makandal, Imam Bukman, you know, all of these people who were actual freedom fighters, you know, here in America, who were Muslim, that we should know about. You know, how come there's no movie on the life of Imam Makandal? How come there's no movie on the life of the Queen Nanny in Jamaica, who was the leader of the Maroon community? She was a Muslim. So there's documented evidence that many of the freedom fighters around the Caribbean islands and in the Americas were Muslim, or had, you know, very deep connections to Muslim communities. That side of the story is not told. And why I think that that's important is because if we normalize cultural expressions of the Deen of Al-Islam, then I think that will go a long way of normalizing within our community. And I mean, and that's has been the clash, because there was a time where, you know, hip hop, you know, it was a lot of Muslim, and there still is a lot of Muslim hip hop artists who may, you know, make different modes of expression, songs, hip hop about the Deen. But there was a time where, you know, especially with the whole Salafi thing, people were telling us that music was haram. You know, that you can't listen to music, you can't express yourself this way. So I mean, there's still people that are, you know, recovering from that, if you will. That are, you know, there's still people recovering from that. That people who still believe that their own cultural mode of expression is haram. What does that do to a human being when you convince them that their own cultural mode of expression that's authentic to who they are is haram? This is like spiritual oppression, you know. So I really feel that we have to do better at making sure that our children are comfortable with these things, that they grow up listening to you know, their own, you know, rhythm of music, of that's in line with their mode of expression. And even poetry, you know, there's people like Amir Suleiman. There's, you know, there's people that's already doing these things. So I feel like that needs to be normed, and there needs to be modes of expression about it, even on cinema. Like there needs to be movies about, you know, who our leaders were. Imam Luqman, you know, the a lot of you know that name, you know, the Imam in Detroit, that whole game. These be movies are about who these people were, modes of expression about who these people were for children and for young adults, so that it's normalized and they know what's going on. Because the reality is that there is a counter, a counter pop culture, you know, that exists that's fighting against that. You know, there's people who would tell you that music is haram, you know, but they blast in whatever cultural, and to them they don't count that as music, you know, because it's from their homeland and it's from, you know, it's, you know, whatever. That's not music, you know. And that's and so we have to be, you know, we have to make sure that our children feel comfortable in their own skin and being who they are and expressing who they are. You know what I'm saying? And that to be the norm, that they're not trying to, because the reality is everybody's trying to be us anyway, but they're just emulating the worst of what they're seeing. So if we can counter that with positive modes of, you know, of, you know, cultural expression, then good. You know, that should be encouraged. But I mean, it still has to be, everything else has to be a part of the picture too, because if people don't have the right intention or the right guidance, then it all goes down. I mean, look what happened to Dean Squad. I think that's a good example. You know, Dean Squad, you know, I think, you know, the children really used to love them. They're not even a group anymore because of whatever, you know. Ego can get involved even when you have a good intention. So there still has to be some guidance around what's going on. But you know, the youth should have a certain, you know, freedom to express themselves culturally. I mean, if you want them to listen to certain things, then normalize, bring them to dhikr while they're young. Bring them to the wazifa. Let them hear that. You know, let them hear La ilaha illallah recited rhythmically. You know, let them hear qasidas. There's plenty of, you know, there's native deen. There's plenty of people doing, you know, it's already out there. We just got to expose them to it at an age where they're still sponges and they're soaking that in, so that's normal to them. Don't tell them music is haram, but you know, as soon as they step outside, somebody blasting Lil Baby. I mean, what they gonna come home singing? What they gonna come home humming? So, you know, we got to counter that with positive modes of expression. So I think that's a very good way to counter.
So, question though, you got an answer you can think about. I'm gonna go to Mujahid, but I want, follow what I said. Tomorrow,
Right.
you're the imam. You're the imam. Tomorrow, you're talking about in the next couple years. No, you wake up tomorrow. You're in charge. Is in your lap. What do you do to change it? No, listen.
I'm listening.
I'm telling you something, not theory. It happened to me just like that. You're in charge.
Right.
Anyone that knows our masjid, for me, I'll give you what I did. The first thing I did was change education. That was the first agenda. Everyone in here must be Ahl Sunnah, must follow a personal, a particular school in jurisprudence. You must follow one of the two main schools in Aqidah. You're going to learn about Tasawwuf. That was the first agenda. And it took me years of just changing the mindset of the community. But that was the first duty I did. The second thing I did was establish norms of what is acceptable and what is not, right? So I'm just giving you my way, what I did, right? Some things worked. If I could go back, which you did, I would change some things. I think I was a little bit too hard. And another thing I did was I established Black leadership that is respected, right? And that, alhamdulillah, I think of all the things that was in me as an imam, I think that today is the one that I'm most happy about, that I established Black leadership that is respected. You know what I mean? So I'm giving you something that can happen now, but it's your turn now. Tomorrow, in your respective community, you're the imam. What do you do?
Alhamdulillah. You know it's crazy, Imam. You probably don't remember, but I think I first met you down in Durham, North Carolina. I think that's when we first met, back in Durham. And I remember you gave me Al-Burhan Al-Mu'ayyid. You gave me that book years ago. It's crazy. I was reading it yesterday. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. And I remember you talking. I remember you going to the Masjid, and somebody asked you about what do you think about Barack Obama, and you responded was like my response is you said this is what I think. What I think is who's his successor? Who do we put up to be his successor? Who is Imam Muhammad's successor? Like you really was like driving that home, and I was like, man, subhanAllah, he's right. Like who is Obama's successor? Who was Imam Muhammad's successor? And then like right after that talk, not too long after that, the imam in my community back in Greensboro, North Carolina, he had to step down, right? He had to step down. And at the time I was one of the assistant imams. And so it was kind of like, dang, man, he dipped out unexpectedly. So what we gonna do? And so in my mind, I was like, man, I said, man, look, we gotta teach, brother. We gotta teach. So I drafted some basic curriculum in Islamic belief, basic curriculum in Farda Ayn as far as fiqh, like how to pray, we do all different things, and then some basics in tasawwuf, and I made it very clear. I was like, yo, this is what we're gonna do. These are the classes, and the community, they weren't exposed to terms like madhab, ash'ari, maturidi, tasawwuf. They weren't too familiar with that. And I knew that if I just threw them words out there that early on, they'd be like, yo, what is Mujahid talking about? What are you talking about? So I was like, okay, cool. Let's just let's run through the Hadith of Jibril, and we used that. I mean, in Wallahi, like that literally was like the format for maybe 6 months. Like we just broke down each part, each part of that hadith. And like that became like the foundation of the masjid. So when you go to the masjid, this time, people, they might not be able to say, yo, I'm Ashari and Aqidah, but if you were to talk to them, they'll clearly tell you that that the law is not contained by time and space. They could run down the 13 necessary attributes and the 13 things that are impossible. Like they could run that down, right? Because we would go over it again and again. I test them on it, and so you're right. So education was I remember back in Greensboro, that was the first thing that we had to correct. Like we was like, we got to get this right. We got to make sure that our people actually know the deen correctly, and through that, you'd be surprised how thankful they become when they realize, like, wow, like I'm actually learning. I'm actually getting something new. I'm actually like getting the deen. Like people become very thankful. And I know sometimes in leadership, the thought is like sometimes the thought is, yo, is it too much? Am I going too hard? You know, will people reject me? Like, like I think about Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu. I mean, you had to trust in Allah, and ask Allah to guide your heart with sincerity, and go forward, and do what needs to be done for the preservation of the community. So if I had to do it all over again, in that sense, I mean, yeah, I would still start with education. I was, like I'm there with you, man. Education has to be there. It has to be there.
MashaAllah.
I'll come back to you 1 second, Mujahid, because since it actually happened, and we got to figure out what happened, right? See, because you said this actually happened to you, what happened to me. Mm-hmm. I'm still in the job, so right. I don't know what happened to you. Wait a minute, because I'm still doing that process, right. So I got to know what happened. So think about that, and what went wrong. What was the cause of us having this conversation? From you're not being the imam there, mm-hmm. You were the next in line, right. And you have the imam now. What is the state of that community? What did you do, or what happened, and how could you have established, right. So you would have been living what we're talking about?
Right.
One of the things that I want us to get out of, and all of us got to think of, we can always talk about yesterday.
Right.
But we need to be prepared for today and tomorrow, mm-hmm. Right? So today is that every moment, right?
Right.
We're in the now. What are we doing now, right? And then how is now preparing us for tomorrow? So I'm going to come back to you. That you can't run from that. I'm coming back.
All right?
So I want you to hit the question. Tomorrow, you're the leader. You're in charge. What do you do to change everything you're talking about?
Bismillah. First, I mean, I would start the same place you guys start. Education. You have to change the perspective, the minds of the people, so that they can, even fully digest what you have to offer. I really feel like certain times, and I've actually seen this in my travels throughout the United States, that there's some places where the imam is not even able to work in his full potential because the community is not ready to receive what he may have to offer. So I think education is key, and we see the fruits of what you've been able to do, Imam Amin. So hats off to you, and may Allah continue to bless and preserve you, because I really believe that it's clear that that what you've been able to accomplish and how the community is still growing, is that Allah has really blessed you, and that you definitely had a sincere intention behind what you were doing. So I believe the same thing. The only thing I would add to that curriculum is history. I really believe that history is one of the missing, the elephants in the room, if you will. That many people, once people can, because history, and I'm speaking personally, history is what helped me embrace wholeheartedly who I am as a Muslim. That me understanding, who Malcolm X was, who Marcus Garvey was, who Noble Drew Ali was, who these men were, aside from there might have been Akida issues or certain things, but just who these men were, what's available on who these men were, and what their intention was in establishing whatever organization or institution they established. And me learning that history is what empowered me with love for not only being Muslim, but for being an African-American Muslim, for being Muslim here in America. That, Allah has given us a task. One of my teachers said it this way. One of my teachers, and he actually was was Sudanese. Because and when I say that, because he's not from here, that, I was explaining to him briefly, I was trying to keep it brief, but I was explaining to him the sojourn of African-American Muslims. And he was shocked. There's only a couple of them that really understand English enough to understand everything that I was saying. This is when I was actually in Sudan. And he was so shocked at what I was telling him. And he said, he said, look, if what you're telling me is true, then why leave America? He said, why leave America? He said, you should stay there and continue to, uplift your community and do what you're doing. And he said, I understand, there's knowledge that you're seeking that might be here. But he said, listen, if I was you, even if however long you choose to stay here for knowledge, I would go back. He said, and this is what stood out to me. He said, it's almost as if Allah has promised you and your community Jannah. He said, with the challenges that you're speaking of, it's almost as if Allah has promised Jannah for your entire community. And that really shook my world. I was just like, man, and this is a sheikh. This is a Maliki, completely Ahl Sunnah wal Jamaat, Maliki scholar, sheikh of Tasawwuf, a Murabbi sheikh. It's almost as if your community is promised Jannah, is what he said to me. And I always took that with me, in my head, we definitely do have a lot in front of us, but if we do it right, Allah is going to bless us. So along with education, I would say that, and I think this is important for every masjid, that every masjid should have, the history of Islam in America, something that is talking about the specific sojourn of Muslims here in America. Many Muslims here, they don't know that there were Muslims here before Columbus. The brother of Mansa Musa, that whole history of Muslims being in the Americas, African Muslims being in the Americas before the transatlantic slave trade, before Columbus, and before, British colonialism took the world by storm. And that history is important to understand. Imam Talib and Sidi Habib Rasul, in particular, are two of my teachers as it pertains to, the specifics of the history of America. I'm one of the blessings of living in New York is having access to Imam Talib. I'm telling you, Imam Talib at MIB is like a walking encyclopedia. The amount of, he has books with no ISBN numbers. I'm talking like books that are like before they were doing ISBN numbers. He has books that are just like that our community needs, like wallahi. So if it wasn't the pandemic, I would be taking even more advantage of what he has. You know how it is. The sheikhs don't want to give you their rare books. Can't take it out the library, but you can read it while you're there. So I feel like that's another thing. We have to take advantage of the elders that are still alive and here while we can. Even if we normalize, story time within the community, maybe have an elder speak for some time, telling their own sojourn into becoming Muslim, into, from whatever organization they're from, or if they converted. I think that is another thing that needs to be established. That if we can normalize the youth, not only respecting the elders, but loving the elders, loving them, that alone would change a lot in our community. That, there shouldn't be any clash amongst the elders and the youth, really. The elders should be looking to put the youth on, and the youth should be looking to lift the elders up. So, if we can normalize that, I think that's another thing. The elders there should be like maybe a specific time, maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks, where a respected elder within the community has the mic to tell their sojourn specifically. And, and we invite the youth in particular to sit and listen to them. So those are the things that I would add: a history lesson, a part of the curriculum, and also the elders, normalizing the elders being able to tell their stories, and the youth sitting and listening, and being able to ask questions and different things like that. Those things need to be known within our communities. Inshallah.
I want to encourage y'all with something for future, for now and for the future. I want you, both of you, to see yourself as a leader, right? The way you talk is going to determine how others perceive you, right? I'm talking when you're dealing with other cultures. One of the things that I always try to emphasize with our younger brothers, learn your deen well so you never feel inferior to no one else, right? Right? So, when we talk about history, you'll notice one of the things we push at Masjid Muhammad is continuous connection, chains of narration, asanid. That's a big thing we push. We talk about it all the time. Because that is where we as a people have been stripped of our blood lineage. Allah gave us a spiritual lineage, and he gave it to us, right? So just as the Pakistani or the Bengali or the Arab or even the African, and let's not forget this, because we as African Americans are our own group of people. Though we have connection from the past that we came from Africa, we're not African. We're uniquely African, Black, American. And when I see a big mistake that I see many of us is making, and it's just my opinion, and I'm willing to debate it with anyone. I like to debate. So as they say, right? So I'm willing to debate it. That I think is a big mistake for us to do a Back to Africa movement. I think we should connect and learn from Africa, but I believe our sojourn and our efforts should be taking America. I really believe that. And making America ours, stating our rightful claim, and then going to educate the world, right? That's what I believe. So I remember, I'm going to tell you a story, and I don't mean to go long because we got a grade, but I want to share this with you. An African sheikh, he came to visit us. And he came basically sharing his goods. And when he came to Masjid Muhammad, I was like, we got our own goods. We don't need your goods. So as he was showing his goods, I'm a man, I'm a leader, here's our goods, right? You don't come to a country and just sell your goods. They're going to say, oh, if there's going to be some import, there's going to be some what? Export. You're not just coming and putting your stuff down. Here's our stuff. And he discovered that our stuff is better than your stuff. We know our stuff better than you know your stuff. And he's looking like, where did you learn? And I told him, I said, the same way you learn from our teachers. And we preserve just like you preserve, right? And he said, let me tell you what he did. So when I left, and he did it in several masajid, black masjids, he was going in the masjid, taking the members of the masjid, making them join making him his followers under the nose of the imam. And I said to him, I was like, we're not looking to follow anyone. We're looking to partnership with someone. We're looking to cooperate with someone, but we ain't following nobody. Well, I'm a leader, so I don't speak like a follower. I'm a leader, just like he's a leader. Do you understand my point? And what I mean by that is sometimes when the others come, They're looking for us to speak like followers, not leaders. Right? I'll give you, just as we were when we were in Dunya. Y'all wasn't in Dunya, so I'm going to give y'all that. Right? You can't come on my block, do nothing. Y'all remember Ice Cube, right? When Ice Cube said in that line, it's kind of vulgar, so I don't want to repeat it, right?
We know it. I know the line. I know the line.
Right? You know what I'm talking about. You're not coming up in my hood doing nothing. You get yours, I get mine too, right? We've lost that with our Islam as black people, right? If we look at Malcolm, you mentioned Malcolm. Do you think Malcolm went around the world like a pauper, or he went like a leader, like a statesman? How did he approach the others? That's why he was respected. He went as a leader. We have our own nation in America. And I'm just saying, when I asked about you being a leader, I want you to start thinking like a leader. Don't say what we should do. I'm the leader. I'm the ruler. This is what we're going to do with the help of Allah. Do you follow my point? But you got to have that seriously, because that's how people push us around. We talk with a lack of confidence, right? And that is something that we got to change. No one's going to come in Masjid Muhammad as an imam. We got an imam. No one's going to come into Masjid Muhammad as a sheikh. We have our sheikh. You are coming in as a sheikh, respect it, and we're going to be respected. But you're not coming to grab followers. And you'll find this is a mistake we're making. That's why our communities are falling apart, right? Someone will come in and you have an imam that's been serving you on the ground every day, and we look at the other one over our imam. Oh, what's going on here? Absolutely not. And it doesn't matter who he is, because no one let someone come in their house and put their foot on their table. All right, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I just had to get that out there because that's a serious thing.
Nah, man, you're right. That is a serious thing. You know, that is definitely a serious thing. And it reminds me of a Masjid 10 down in Charlotte. Actually, it was Imam Atif. You know, Imam Atif from Jersey City. You know,
that's my homie.
That's my man, right? Small world, right? You tell him, yeah, small world. Right, it's my man, right? That's my man's, right? It's brother, you know what I mean? Like, so, you know, like I remember he and I, you know, we were talking on it for hours, right? For hours. We just, we decipher this building, right? Building in the parking lot, and I remember him talking about how somebody was like teaching in the masjid, but they didn't come to him, or they didn't come to him, the leadership in the masjid. He's like, hold up, pause. He's like, no, y'all can't just teach up in here and like no one know who you are, and you're trying to have a big majlis in the masjid. He's like, it's disrespectful. He was like, you come holler at us, come holler at me first, and then I'll let you know if it's cool to have a majlis. You know what I'm saying? But you can't just have a majlis and it's like, I don't know about it. You know what I mean? I was like, I respect that, man. I really respect that. You know, setting protocol because like you said, you know, they'll do it. You know, we should do it. You know, and it all stems from this thinking that their ice is colder and their grass is greener mentality. You know what I mean? And you're right. We have to dead that. You know, we have to understand that we have our house, and you're right. You know, you don't let nobody come to your crib and, you know what I'm saying, go in your refrigerator and drink your juice. Yo, that's crazy, man. Like, it's wild to me, man. Like, but like, come on, man. You're gonna drink the grape Kool-Aid, man. That's my favorite, yo. Like, don't do that. Like, you can't let it happen. You know what I mean? You can't let it happen. And for too long, yo, you're right, man. We've been letting it happen. We've been letting folks just come in, and you know, like subhanAllah, right? Like, I think about a lot of African American masjids that just basically that have been just overtaken by other people because, you know, we ain't protected.
Exactly.
We we lost it. You know what I mean? I remember one year I go to the Masjid. Everybody in there complexion was like mine, right? African American complexion like mine. I walk in a year later, man. Everybody about 50 shades lighter, from other countries. I'm like, oh, what happened with this? And next thing I know, the Imam isn't even African American anymore. And because we keep thinking that what they have is better, and want to follow under them. And you're right, Imam, that definitely right. That Allah has blessed us with something. That Allah had, we're gonna be this for real, right? Whenever I read like the first 7 ayats of Surah Qasas, I see us, right? The ayats are, the ayats are about, the people of, Bani Israel and their oppression under Fir'aun and how he and his people, slaughter the boys but allow the women to live, right? Sounds familiar. Right? It sounds familiar. Allah says he repeats his creation, so it sounds very familiar. Then Allah says that he'll make those who are weak, he'll strengthen them and make them imams in the land. Make them imams in the land, and Allah will, because Allah has conferred his favor upon them, right? So every time I read, I'm thinking like, this is our story and it's happening now, and Allah said, the believers are already successful. So I already feel like we are, like you said, we're already the leaders in this land. We already have that favor with Allah. We just have to act on it. We have to be strong and just, with our leadership. And just one more point before we go to the next thing, something very interesting about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We talk about how merciful he was, how kind he was, right? Rahmatullah alameen. He is. This is what Allah Azza wa Jal says. The thing about it is that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, people respected his mercy because they knew that he bring that thunder, because they also knew he bring that wrath. You know what I mean? Like, people forget this. We forget that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was ready to go. He was on go mode if need be. We talk about the story of how Omar, may Allah be pleased with him, became Muslim, right? One narration is that he ran up in his sister's house with her husband. And he abused them until he read some verses of Surah Taha, and he went to go find the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to take shahada. When we typically leave out what happens, between him, going with the Prophet and him taking shahada, right? There's something very key that happens in that story, is that when he went to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what did the Prophet do? The Prophet, it wasn't just, oh, we cool, we peace, it's love. Because remember, Omar said he wanted to kill the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So naturally, if someone says they want to kill you, initially there is no peace. It's like we're on go mode. So Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, some reports said that he actually slammed Omar when he saw him, and he asked him, is it are we fighting or is it peace? And then Omar said the shahada, right? So what does that teach us, right? That teaches us that not only did the people respect the Prophet's mercy, they also respected his strength, and because of his strength, the people were able to accept his mercy, right? Because if you're just being just nice all the time, it's not necessarily mercy. It's just you're just being patient with people. You know what I mean? And patience has a place, but when you're trying to establish leadership and authority, authority, sultana, people have to understand that you wave the stick. So alhamdulillah. That was a good reminder, man. Alhamdulillah.
Y'all gonna be the next sheikhs, man. I gotta make sure y'all ready for the fight.
Alhamdulillah, man. It's good. We appreciate it. Real talk. Like we need that. We need that fire lit. We got to be ready for it.
I want to share something with you. Na'il, was you getting ready to say something?
No. Go ahead, Imam. Bismillah.
I want you to write this name down, because I'm gonna step out here for a minute. And I want to share something with you. It is one of the routes from where I learned. And Islamically, it helped me be proud of being black as a black man, right? And from my travels, one of my teachers from the route that I learned is a sheikh. I'm going to address this because we're being cheated, and I want to help us to the best of my ability. Right? I want to share something with you. Right? One of the routes that I learned, one of my chains of narration from the teachers I learned through the route of Sheikh Abdullah al-Habashi, right? Rahimahullah rahmatan wasiya. I want you to study this man. I know the name, some of them are going to hear Habashi, and that's it. Their mind goes somewhere else. Forget that. We black. It's okay to be black. I don't need your approval. I want you to just go study the life of that man, right? So and I'm going to explain it. I'll even go help. I'm going to do it. I'm going later, not now. I'm going to tell you his life story. We can learn a lot from this man as a people. And he's contemporary, not a long time ago, not some story. No, recently. This man came from Africa, Ethiopia, and came through the Middle East and was the authority in hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I'm not speaking from someone else. I'm speaking from my teachers all around the world that even they disagree with the organization AICP, not a one would deny the status of that man. Not a one.
Right.
Not a one. Now here's my thing. That tells me something. We can do that. This is a black man. He was from Africa, from Ethiopia. He wasn't intimidated by nobody. He was an authority. And you go anywhere in the Islamic world, everyone respects his level. Period. Right? They may disagree with the organization. They may disagree with some of his concepts. But I've never heard no one that is honest speak about his knowledge. Now, let me explain something to you. I'm going to talk real to you. A lot of the Arabs, especially the Lebanese, are racist. This is real.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Straight racist. And they treat the blacks like niggers. Listen, but all of them kiss the feet of Sheikh Abdullah. What's wrong? I'm just giving you something to think about. They kiss his feet and his hands out of ta'zim, out of reverence for his status. I want you to think about that. So that tells you what we can do if we put in the work. But that's why you got to understand his story to see the work, right? Rarely in our time do we have the people who reach his rank in the whole world that reach his rank. But guess what? These great scholars who are like him, they'll make it that we don't even talk about them. Don't mention them at all. Don't mention them. But we'll talk about people who are far less than them in rank. I want you to pay attention to this. And I know I've been in the libraries of some of the greatest scholars in the world. They all got his books, all of them. So when I look at that, I'm not talking about organizations. I'm talking about what we can become as people. And these are examples because for us, we think we're inferior in the deen. So look at one of us who was the head of the scholars in the world. And he was just like us, right? They had their own city. They built their stuff in Africa before they even went to the Arab world. And many of them, it was in Mecca, was in different places that were giants that never get talked about. Giants that the Arabs have to come sit at their feet. I want us to start aiming high like that, right? As a people, if we start having that, it can show us what we can become. And I mentioned that, and it's going out on the line, but I challenge anyone to dispute that fact. Don't tell me about your politics. Don't tell me about, this, oh, they made this. I want to talk about purely his rank and status and knowledge and respect in the Islamic world. When we think about that, that's something for us to pick our heads up. Those who want, the very ones who try to make us put our heads down, when we look at men like that, we can put our heads up. And we have something to show our children to say, you give it like this. Today, you hear all these people, right, talk about Albany. Everyone knows Albany, right? Everyone Albany, right? That's what they teach our children. Albany was like a kid to him in knowledge and in rank. When Albany was running crazy in Damascus, it was him who shut him up. A black man. This something we should think about, right? Because we're lacking confidence and pride in our deen. And we got giants that look like us, that came from where we came from, and we're taught to ignore them. We're taught to ignore them, and they find every way so we don't accept them. So we don't even learn their books. But we go learn from someone who is inferior to them in knowledge and piety in every rank. We'll go do that. We have been duped, and we got to reverse that. And I gave you the whole lineage. A person who was totally racist to us would come and sit at his feet. All of them. That's something that we should think about. But we'll stop there.
No, I'm glad that you said that, Imam, because this is why I think history is very important. That, if we have a consistent class within our Masjid, not only on fiqh, usul, and these different things, but also history, so that we can know these people and know these names. Sheikh Al-Habashi was a very close friend of Sheikh the Abuna Sheikh in Medina during his time. Who was one of his chain. He also has a chain of to the Mukashfi in Sudan, Abuna Sheikh, which is from the same line that I've taken from. So I'm very I have not read any of this brother's books, but I am familiar with his name because of that. So I think that you're right. We need to normalize the scholarship of these men, like Sheikh Al-Habashi, like any of, and I mean, it's I think it's even better to find men who are not so far removed from the society that we live in. And we don't have to go far. I mean, this was the same with Sheikh Ibrahim Niyas. This was the same with Sheikh Ahmad Obama. This was the same. Many Arabs used to come sit at the feet of Sheikh Ibrahim Niyas. And he was a black man, darker than Sheikh Al-Habashi. And they were taken from him. He was a scholar in his own right. So we don't have to go even too far back, to see the greatness of our people and what they've been able to accomplish. So I think we definitely have a lot ahead of us, but it's about that's a part of knowledge. It has to be a part of our curriculum some type of history class of them understanding not only the sojourn of our people here in America, but even just the scholars and the imams of the deen that looked like us, that came from, you know, the lands that our ancestors are from, etc. I really believe that also is a key part of changing the perspective of our people, you know, for them, and them having that confidence and that love and that understanding of who they are, where they come from, and what is possible for them to accomplish as far as the level of ilm, the level of the station of piety, etc., in the deen of al-Islam. So yeah, you know, and that's one of the things that drew me to Sudan. That the Sudanese are authorities on almost every science of the deen. Really, if you go to Sudan, when I went to Durman, I was like, man, you know, I could stay here forever, man. You know, it's beautiful. You know what's even available in Sudan to learn. So yeah, I'm there. Alhamdulillah, I'm not new to, you know, this concept, but it needs to be normalized within our community. It needs to be normalized, and definitely.
And you know the way that's done, Na'il? That's by memorizing, preserving al-asanid. And one of the things that Wahhabi Salafi doctrine has done is wipe that out, because they don't have a share in that, right? So when you start learning properly and you preserve these asanid, you're going to discover a lot of black giants in our asanid, in our chains of narration back to the Prophet ﷺ, and you'll realize that a lot of the great scholars that we know were students of our people, Mm-hmm. So there's a lot to do here. There's a lot to unpack, but inshallah, we're starting the process. And I just say, and for me, I realize that we don't have a lot of time, right? And it's got to come a point where we just speak. We aren't looking for your approval. I don't care what you think. Literally, don't care what you think. And that's not arrogance. It's necessary. Because caring about it is insanity to care about what someone thinks who's never going to help you, who's going to keep you in the situation. That's insanity. You're worrying about what someone thinks is going to keep you in your situation and not going to give you the tools to move up, to advance, to build your own nation, because we used to learn that from us as younger people, my age group, has always been the fear of a black planet. Right? So, you know what I mean? That, hey, we must take that role. And it starts with us. And we're in America, where everybody want to be like. Let's do it.
So there's a book, I just wanted to say there's a book, there's plenty of books on this topic that highlight the virtues and the excellence of black imams of the deen and black sahaba, etc. And alhamdulillah, the most recent effort, our Sheikh Muhammad Mendes is translating a book that you can pre-order right now, a translation of Imam Suyuti's book on the virtues of the Abyssinian and black, you know, sahabas and imams of the deen. So I encourage everyone to look that up. I think it's in partnership with Celebrate Mercy, but, you know, look that up and to purchase that. Even Imam al-Jawzi already has a book, The Virtues of Black and Abyssinians. Like, there's plenty of books that have been translated to English already, actually, that where you can learn these things. And this is why I say I think that, you know, there being modes of cultural expression around these stories is best. Like imagine if there was like an anime series on the Black Sahabas, you know, an anime series on, you know, the imams of the deen that were of Abyssinian descent, that were melanated, you know. So I really feel like, you know, if our children see those images, if we do what we can to normalize these things, that our children don't even have that issue. They're not even looking at anyone else. You know, that's what we want to normalize, inshallah ta'ala.
Inshallah, yeah, definitely. And first I want to say, yeah, Imam, thank you for sharing about Sheikh Abdullah Al-Habashi Harari. Like, mashallah, like when I was in California, man, like you said, I know some people have some issues with the organization, but Sheikh Abdullah himself was like no joke. Definitely an inspiration and light and beacon that we can draw from. And as Brother Na'il said, and you have said before, like, you know, like we have, you know, so many giants, you know, both men and women, you know, in our traditional. Like, I think about our mother, Maryam Yes, you know, may Allah have mercy on her. I mean, like, you know, Quran teacher, you know, like, you know, mashallah, I've had, you know, I wasn't able to meet her myself, but I know a lot of people who have benefited with sitting with Sheikh Maryam. Like I said, there's so many giants. Like you said, that's directly, like, that's part of the Senate, and many people who we look up to, that we revere. But you're right, study with them, you know, and it's even deeper. And Brother Na'il said that, you know, there are people in our deen that, you know, we automatically assume that they're Arab or very pale looking or Persian, but in reality, they're actually, you know, dark complexion, or they might have been straight up African, or had African features. I mean, you know, we know this about a lot of Sahaba. You know, we like people like Imam Ali, alayhi salam. Like, you know, we know that we hear descriptions of him being the same complexion as Sayyidina Bilal. And you know, many people, you know, if you would look at, you know, pictures of Imam Ali, you know, they have pictures of, I seen pictures of him looking like Michael Jackson after the operation. I'm like, well, like, where did that come from? You know, it's not, you know, like, this is not what's been narrated from our scholars. So you said it's like literal whitewashing or Arab washing of the deen. And you're right, it has to stop, and we can't be afraid to stand up and say, man, look, that's not right, that's wrong. We're gonna tell the truth and do our own thing.
Right. And guess what? What's going to be hard about that is because they stole all of our narratives. Right? So we got to take the narrative ourselves, right? And we got to tell it ourselves. So we got to learn, number one, so that no one can, like, right? Someone sent me from Egypt, I'll share you. They sent me a Rad al Abdullah al-Habashi, right? Refutation. And I sent him back. I read it. I said, why you send me this junk? Right? And let me tell you how much hatred that they put in us. The person who sent me know it was junk. Just because it was against him, they listened. They knew it was junk. No value, no weight, straight Wahhabi nonsense. Right? They knew it. But that's how bad it is with us. Right? You know yourself. It's junk. And I ain't talking about someone who don't know. Nah, you learn, you sat, you know better. I understand the person who doesn't know. But the person who knows doesn't accept. And I'll close one time to show you that rank. I had a teacher, we were in Lebanon, and he was having problems with that group. So he was a student of Sheikh Abdullah. He wasn't from that community, that organization. But like all of the people in Sham who weren't, they studied under him, all of them, right? So I said, go to the Sheikh and talk to the Sheikh. He said, I can't. I said, why? He said, because whatever I say, he's going to come with some manuscript that no one has ever heard of and refute me. Right? But now listen to this. When I looked at that, you know what that said to me? Look at his rank. Look at his rank. He said he's going to come with a manuscript that none of us, these are graduates with master's degrees and PhDs. I ain't talking about anybody. PhDs in hadith, doctor of fil hadith, right? And he talking about he's going to bring something I never heard of. Masters. But they would tell us what? Don't take from our masters. Or they would take from our masters, reshape it, repackage it, and give it back to us. That's deep. They take from our masters, repackage it, and give it back to us.
Stepped on knowledge.
What the heck is that?
People copy their oppressors.
Repackage it and give it back to us. What the heck is that?
They're only doing what the colonizers did to them as well. You know, what the Brit. I mean, if you look at the history of what British colonialism, the effects of British colonialism on the Muslim world, they're really only doing the same thing. I mean, the science of jurisprudence itself is not even the same. You know, we don't have many Muslim courts that are actually applying, you know, certain things anymore. You know, there's certain things that, you know, aren't even politically accepted within Muslim countries. You know, I mean, there's a great movement to secularize and modernize even the Islamic world that's still happening rapidly. So, I mean, the deen, there's a lot of things that need to happen, you know? So, I mean...
And we got to end it up. We got to close up. We done went almost 2 hours. But I don't think we need a lifetime for these conversations. But guess what? We're making a step. Every step, every week, every other week, we're making a step after step. Because we gotta become men. And being a man is, you know, sometimes painful. You know, the growing pains of manhood. You know that New Edition song, y'all young guys, y'all like the music. Growing up in the pain, right? Not a man till you come of age, right? Giving up teenage years.
Dang, he been throwback for real, man.
Yeah, but these things is real, right?
Right.
We gotta arm ourselves because we're in a war, which is a mental war, a spiritual war, an emotional war. Exactly. And as long as they got us feeling that we can accomplish, and then they block us, well, we know from America they did the same thing, right?
Yeah.
That's why we got HBCUs, right? Somebody at one point said, ho, 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 right? We got to say that in Islam. Ho, 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 ho. And we got to be courageous enough to say that, right?
Most definitely.
And don't worry. Alhamdulillah, we started the process. We got your back. Don't be afraid, right? We with you. All right, one of y'all close us out with dua briefly, inshallah.
Bismillah.
Oh, 1 second. And when we have these conversations, speaking our reality doesn't mean we hate others, right? We are Muslim. So it doesn't entail that because we speak our reality, we have disdain for others. That's never been us. That's been perpetrated against us. We are people of love. No one in the world knows love like black folks, right? No one knows loyalty like black folks, except when it comes to black folks doing that to each other. And that's the part we got to fix. We'll love and be loyal to everyone else except ourselves. We must fix that. And so no one should take it that we're, in one sense, not realizing that we have to follow the deen, but following the deen doesn't mean we can't love ourselves. In fact, part of the deen is loving yourself. That's part of it.
Yes.
Imam Mujahid, Sheikhuna.
Sheikhuna. Come on. I don't have any. Okay, all right. I have one gray hair, so I might be Sheikhuna now. Right. We're doing closing statements. MashaAllah.
No. Closing dua. We ran out of statements.
Oh man.
So the dua is on you. Brief, whatever. The Fatiha. Don't gotta go.
Okay.
Whatever you feel.
All right. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wassalam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Ajma'in. But inshallah, we pray that Allah Most High will grant us of His mercy, of His protection, of His love and His strength, and encourage us to speak the truth in the face of injustice, wherever it may come from, and that Allah Azza wa Jal will give us the keys and the skills and the fortitude and the certitude to pass what is necessary to subsequent generations, and to keep our families safe, to keep them embodied in this love and this mercy and this protection and this power. And we say this with full certainty of Allah, and we send peace and prayers upon His beloved Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
Al-Fatiha. Could y'all stay on right after for 1 minute? Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Inshallah, we'll see you tomorrow night as well for the Black Imams Roundtable. And tomorrow morning, we start our post-Fajr reflections. We do Minhaj al-Abidin, starts at 6 o'clock, 6:30 because of the Fajr time. So 6:30, and then at 7 o'clock, we go to our book, Sunnah Tawfiq, inshallah. Thank you for your support, your participation. Inshallah, let's keep it going. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.